Welcome to Abundance. You guessed it, a podcast dedicated to all things surrounding dance. I am Kristen.
And I am Hannah, and we are two best friends who are brought together by this art form.
Please join us in 5, 6, 7, 8.
So on today's episode, we welcome the extraordinary Nicholas Ruscica. I'm fortunate to have crossed paths with him virtually during the Limón Pro training program in 2020. Since this was the start of the pandemic, we never actually met or danced in person together, which is crazy because we spent weeks together online. But even on screen, Nicholas caught my eye from the very beginning. He has an immense amount of talent, which has led him to landing a contract as a company member with the José Limón Dance Company. Congratulations, by the way. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, congratulations. And I'm excited to learn about you today.
Awesome. Let's dive in.
So you grew up training in Toronto, Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's totally correct.
And did you do all different types of styles of dance growing up, or did you have a focus?
Well, I actually started probably when I was like 5 years old. My parents needed an outlet for me because I had a lot of energy when I was young. And I started b-boying actually. So I was, spinning on my head, doing all that kind of fun stuff. But kind of through like my teachers pushing me into different kinds of programs and stuff like that, I ended up at the National Ballet School in 6th grade. And that's kind of when it's funny, I was very young, but I was like, dance is what I want to do. And I wanted to be like a classic ballet dancer. So I really connected with ballet strongly first. But from there, I found my way into contemporary and modern dance, which is now definitely my passion, including Limón. It's like a very, very, very strong portion of that. But yeah, that's kind of mostly the styles I did in Toronto. Yeah.
Great. And in Canada, you danced with the Canadian Contemporary Dance Theatre. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And they particularly study Limón technique, actually. So that's where I first started to get influenced and exposed to that style of movement. Yeah.
Great. Is that a school now, or is that a company?
They actually have two programs. So they have the School of CCDT and then the company. And I was a part of the company track for 6 years. So we did training all during the week, and then the weekends, typically like 8-hour days, Saturday, Sunday, we would do rehearsals similar to, any kind of company style, and then get some performance opportunities as well.
That's awesome.
And
yeah,
also came from there, right? So Francis,
yeah,
a member in the Limón Company, right? So am I remembering this correctly? I think that's
you are remembering that correct. And we've had like Belinda McGuire as well as Kristen Foote as well, who transitioned from CCDT to Limón, which just kind of makes sense because that's such a strong portion of our focus at CCDT. Yeah,
that's so interesting. I didn't know that, but that makes so much sense why you ended up in New York City and now dancing for the company. Super cool. And my next question, so you got your BFA in dance from California Institute of the Arts. What was the most memorable event that you can recall from your time being there? And
whoa.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
I'm like, whoa, that's a big one.
It's a loaded question.
It's a big one.
Yeah. Well, the thing I really enjoyed about Cal Arts was how creation based it was. It was something that drew me into the program, that it wasn't just technique and being a dancer, but also considered like a young choreographer, from the moment you kind of enter the program. I would say one of the most, maybe it's not like one particular memory, but there was this class called Choreo Composer. And each week we paired off with a different music major and would have to present like a in-process work each week. So we would just kind of like throw something together, very experimental. And I would say those are maybe not one memory, but some of my fondest memories, getting to collaborate with different art forms. Yeah.
That's super cool. And you graduated in 2020. How did COVID influence your remaining time at school and post-grad life?
It really influenced the remaining time I had in school. I'm sure, as we all experienced ourselves, moving to training online was very strange, especially like going from a really nice studio to like squishy carpeted floors and like recording ourselves in classes. And at the time, my last semester, I had finished like all my credits and stuff like that. So I was actually able to go to New York, and we were preparing to perform at the Joyce. I was working with Limón as a guest artist at the time, which I was like super excited about. And then everything in the city and the world shut down. So it definitely was a strange transition. But, you know, something we're all kind of used to and hopefully on our way out of at this point, but we'll see what happens.
Right. Oh, crossing our fingers, right? So crazy.
Yeah. And so I was curious how you actually first got involved with Limón, but it sounds like guest artisting, as if that's a term, being a guest artist with them. Is that how you?
You know what? We can coin that phrase. I like that, guest artisting. Yeah, well, the previous artistic director, Colin Connor, had a pretty strong relationship with CCDT, and I actually met him when I was 13. And I think he saw how passionate I was about the work and stuff, and started throwing me into like duets and different things that maybe I wasn't fully ready for, honestly, at the time, but he, wanted to challenge me. And then after, like, while I was at Cal Arts, I did, not every single year, but almost every single year, I did a Limón training program over the summer just to like maintain that connection. And it's funny because Dante was just a teacher at one of those, so I met him through that as well. So it's kind of been like a culminating relationship, but definitely started at CCDT for sure. Yeah.
Sounds like it was actually pretty natural how it happened.
Yeah. And just kind of felt like stepping into something I was meant to do in a way, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to have that clarity.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and so you have taught Limón technique now at various places. That's my understanding, as well as on the Instagram, right? So you did some virtual Limón classes. Is teaching something you're interested long term? Do you think you're going to stick with that? What's your idea going forward with that?
Well, it's actually funny because I started teaching online, right? And teaching online, especially like in an Instagram setting, you're just speaking into the ether. Sometimes you see people in little boxes and can try and pick out a thing or two. But when I started teaching in person, when kind of, the restrictions started to relax a little bit, I was stressed. It was stressful, working and operating a room, and, finding the best way to be clear with the students and have them, learn through the movement, as well as through my words. Because on Zoom and any online platform, a lot of the best way I felt I could get information across was like with my words a lot of the time. But recently, I've done a lot more teaching. I kind of had a break from my initial period, and it's definitely something I'm very interested in. And kind of, it's cool to think, because I've been going back to CCDT, for instance, and my old high school, Etobicoke School of the Arts, and to kind of think of the guest teachers that I would have and how much they had an impact on me, and thinking of maybe being able to do that for someone else. So yeah, I think it's definitely something I'm interested in, both like as a passion, but also in a way like kind of as a logical next step, but also something I want to continue building on and learning about now, expanding those skills.
Yeah, and probably I think it'd be really cool if eventually you'd be able to teach. I mean, maybe you are doing this, but in like the Limon school, like they have the school programs, right? Don't they have like for the kids and stuff? I think it would be cool if you could do something like that too.
Yeah,
I definitely.
I definitely have a strong interest in that. And then I think in the next month or two, I'll be assisting and doing some teaching in that as well. And that's something Limon does really, really well, is just giving you opportunities to either experience and learn about teaching, or they just can also throw you into a class and give you a room full of students to learn while you're helping students learn. So yeah.
It definitely goes both ways. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I am learning every single day.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And teaching virtually is definitely its own separate ball game. So hopefully too, as things keep improving, you get more and more in-person experiences as well. It sounds like you have been getting some of those. So it's great.
Yeah. It's been going quite well.
So during your time so far with the company, do you have, whether it be a favorite role you've danced or just something that you kind of treasure from being a part of the company? I know it's hard probably just to choose like one or two things, but any standout, I guess.
There is one particularly that stands out for me. COVID has obviously been a very like troubling time for all of us, especially in the fields we're interested in. But what it did afford the company was we weren't able to, rehearse regularly in New York. So we were doing a lot of residency work over the last summer. And this one memory in Colorado particularly stands out to me, where we were living at Perry Mansfield in Steamboat Springs for 3 weeks. And all we did was like eat, sleep, breathe, dance. Like that's all we had to focus on. And we were surrounded by this beautiful scenery. And we're creating a film on a piece called The Winged, which was created by José Limón. And I got to do a solo role in that called Pegasus. And funny enough, all around us were horses. So I felt like, I would look out my window and literally see these animals grazing. And I was like, that's also kind of the role I'm trying to embody while being here. So I felt like it was like a really beautiful moment inside of all this, and then leaving there and coming back to Toronto and stuff, back to all this unsure, like, what am I doing? What is dance doing for me? But it was kind of a really beautiful moment of clarity and being able to just like fully commit myself into dance again, which there'd been a very long hiatus, I would say.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that you were able to kind of embody, the animals there at that time too. That's so cool. Yeah.
What we do is almost, oh, sorry, Hannah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what we do is almost like research as dancers, right? We have to like dive into each role so much and try to, whether it be a like historical character or an animal, and just kind of try to pick up all these little pieces and put them together in order to, like Hannah said, kind of embody the role to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I almost felt like I had a cheat code to learning, because I would just look outside, see how the animals moved, and then I mean, in the studio, it was a glass studio and you could see the horses out there too. And I'm like running the solo while there's horses running outside. And I'm like, this is perfect. Like literally, it was very blissful for sure.
Oh, I bet. That's amazing. Well, I think this is a good time for a short break, but thank you so much, Nicholas, and we'll be back in a second.
Here's a word from our sponsor.
All right, we are back. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about choreography. So this seems to be an interest of yours based on what you said about your time at CalArts. And can you just talk to us a little bit about perhaps maybe pieces you've choreographed, what your process maybe looks like, as I know different choreographers kind of approach that very differently. So yeah, can you just speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Well, like you said, like I said, at CalArts, I definitely really was studying my interest in choreography. I would say mostly in like smaller group works or solo works. And to me, like it's very similar to when I improvise, you know, where like it's kind of like these impulses in the body that I like to follow. And I've been lucky enough to be exposed, I feel like, to different choreographers' processes where I'm very interested in like form and rhythm and but also just like sensation. You know, I think dance should feel like an experience or like a journey, whether or not that's abstract or literal, right? So in my creation process, it can differ quite a bit, where either I'm starting with like a concept of something that I want to happen, and that could even just be like, I'm really into this kind of specific rhythm that I'll start with and build from. It could be a piece of music, or it could be phrase work too. I like to create a lot of phrase work and silence as well, just to, Jose called it pure dance, I think is what they kind of called it in their era, where instead of, you know, starting with a narrative, you just start with movement. And I feel like a lot of the time taking that and then working with other people and trying to find that same kind of ownership inside of those sensations is something I'm interested in. I actually just flew in today from Toronto. We had a week off this week, and I was working at my old high school, Etobicoke School of the Arts, and I was choreographing this piece on them, and we were working entirely in silence, and it's with a much bigger group than I'm used to, like 17 grade 11 students or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, there's a piece we're doing right now in the Limón repertoire called Psalm. And although there isn't no music, the music doesn't give you a lot in terms of rhythm, and really it relies on the group really finding connection and being aware of each other. So I wanted to challenge these students and also challenge myself in finding how to make a situation like that work, when especially younger dancers are so used to working with set rhythm and tempo given to them by the music, but to have to find and create the music through their dance. So that's the most recent thing I was kind of like nerding out about a little bit. But yeah, I would say the process can vary, and a lot of that too can be based on who I'm working with and
Right.
what their interests are too. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of the situation as it's presented. Yeah.
And how much time you have, because
Right.
that
That's a
changes
key
a
part.
lot too. Yeah. Like, can we talk, or do we have to jump right in? You know,
Right.
it kind of changes.
Great. So it sounds like you also see maybe choreography as something you envision doing long term in addition to teaching. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually been kind of a big question I've been asking myself recently. in, because I think it's also, we're in a world right now where I think there are a lot of voices that need to be heard, especially through art and expression. And I think wondering what my part in that is, and if myself being the face of, generating movement and putting that on bodies, or maybe supporting someone else's vision in that sense. Because I also do really like interpreting, which is why I like dancing so much, because I love interpreting the ideas and concepts that other movers and other creators have. So definitely in some way, but maybe not directly as like the choreographer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And I mean, I guess part of being a teacher too, sometimes you are just in certain situations where you have to kind of choreograph too, even if that's not maybe your like main title. But it definitely comes up, I would say, in that realm as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting to like learn more about, Nicholas. You also worked with like Toes for Dance, right? Can you talk about how that has been like a compare and contrast with Limón? Like how does it been different and also similar? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I would say like the most similar thing in a way is how my involvement with them came to be, because David Norsworthy, who's co-artistic director of Toes for Dance, which is educational as well as, they do their own performance projects and stuff. It's him and Kristen Carconi, who are like two of my favorite people on the planet and greatly influenced my passion for dance, especially in creation. But I think like an amazing contrast to Limón, which especially when I was young was very like set, we were really in the kind of like rigor and training of it. Toes was really all focused, especially their education programs, on like creating interest in creating movement and improvisation. And it's like the first time I ever used my voice in a process, so like I feel like it was a really good way to diversify the training I was having. And like a lot of different choreographic exercises, whether that's like playing with set phrase material and altering it in our own way, or creating our own pieces, or just getting to be involved with different choreographers in Toronto and in New York as well, and kind of see how their processes differ and get like flavors from each of them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm kind of piecing together like where you came from and like why you dance the way that you do and work the way that you do. That's really cool. I love that. So I guess like my last and final question, and again, this is a bit loaded again.
We tend to do that to people a lot.
Tend to do that.
I'm fine with it.
No, but it's true. I mean, you're one of those people where you're very much like experiencing the dancing when it's happening. Like you're very in the moment, you're in it. And that's why I think one of the reasons people like gravitate to, I know I did, like on the screen, it's like, oh, hey, what is that guy doing? Like, he's really cool. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, why do you dance? And like, what's the feeling that you're going through when you're moving?
That's a big question for sure. I mean, to me, one of the things that I love about dance is that it makes me feel, right? And like, whether that's something I've actually experienced in my life or something outside of myself or something I've never even put words to before, I think the main thing is sensation, and kind of like what I'm saying, that can be emotionally charged or physically charged in any kind of exploration. But it's funny, I was speaking to a musician about this, actually, a drummer for one of my classes, about how to stay present dancing, especially for young students in classes. Like, what are tools that they can use to stay present? And I think we all have senses, right? And, some are limited for some are not, but we can smell, taste, hear, see, and feel, right? And I think each of those, it's kind of like has infinite possibilities off of all of them. So, utilizing your temperature or texture, or even like, it's kind of weird, but it's like, what am I tasting while I'm dancing? Like, these are all ideas and things that I think everyone can play with, and not just in dance, but in life, to make it just makes life more interesting, which I think creates more presence, and in this world where, like, we're talking over a screen right now and everything, it's like, it's actually so hard to stay present. And I feel that, especially with the younger students I've worked with. And I think utilizing these tools that seem foreign, which is strange because they are us, right? It's like these things that we are born with that we can utilize to, and again, not just in dance, but experience our lives in a really present kind of way. But a lot of the time I do feel sensations or impulses of, like, lines of energy, I would say, in my body. And whether that's like I feel like it's not really like predicting the movement, it's just listening to where it's taking you. And that might be a really roundabout way of not saying what I feel when I dance, but I feel like that's kind of the answer I could give right now.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I mean, like, I think throughout this whole time that we've been talking, you have sort of touched upon that in different ways, whether that be in your choreography or just like what you're experiencing when you are, dancing in general, whether that be Limón or whatever else that you have done in your life. And yeah, I think just observing you, watching you, I can see, like, that makes sense. What you said makes sense. So yes, roundabout answer, but it makes sense. I like that.
You're like, you are correct. Answer correct.
I think it was very articulate, though, because I think, at least for me personally, because dance is typically nonverbal, sometimes it can be very hard to, like, verbally explain certain things like we experience as dancers. And so I think that was honestly, like, a really articulate way of, obviously it's different for every person, but of explaining your own personal experience. So
yeah, very good, Nicholas, very good.
Thank you. A+.
Yeah, and with that, I just want to thank you so much for being on this podcast, and everyone go check him out. He's a cool dude. Yeah, I'm pretty sure your Instagram is not private, right? So people can see. So you can look him up, watch his dancing, see what he's up to. And again, thank you so much for being on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure, and kind of will have me thinking about some things afterwards too. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Abun Dance. We appreciate your support. We hope to have PK'd your interest. Feel free to contact us at abundancepodcast5678@gmail.com and give us feedback on what you'd like to hear. That is Abun Dance without parentheses. Go dance yourself silly. Bye for now.
A special thank you to Richard DiFiore for our lovely podcast tune and Matt Mellish for our cover art.